I swear the air inside that church was heavier than anything I've ever felt, like it was pressing down on my chest. My heels clicked against the polished floor as I stepped inside, but every other sound seemed swallowed whole. The whispers, the glances, even my own heartbeat, which I could have sworn was thunder in my ears. I didn't belong there, not really, but I came anyway. The second I crossed the threshold I felt the stares. I didn't have to look up to know they were already talking. His mother's voice cut through the quiet like a blade, low but sharp. She shouldn't even be here. I froze. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, fingernails digging into my palms. I hadn't even reached the third pew yet. She was sitting near the front, her black veil barely covering the cold fury in her eyes. Her jaw was tight, lips pressed together like a held back scream. Her grief was real, I could see that, but so was her rage. I swallowed hard, forcing myself forward. Each step felt like I was dragging 1,000 lb weight behind me. My legs wanted to turn and walk out, but something deeper, maybe guilt, maybe something worse, kept me going. Then Zara stood up, Elias's sister, fierce, loyal, and always the first to speak when no one else would. Her eyes locked onto mine like daggers. "You broke him," she said, not a whisper, not a cry, statement, solid, final gasp. Somewhere behind me someone dropped their program. I didn't know who. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to say something, anything, that I didn't mean to hurt him, that I still dreamt about him sometimes, that I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed, but nothing came out because maybe she was right. I felt heat rush to my face, my throat tightening, my eyes burned, but I wouldn't let the tears fall, not there, not in front of all of them. I turned ready to walk out. I should have known this would happen. I should have listened to my mother when she said, "Naomi, are you sure you want to go? It won't bring him back." But before I could take another step I heard my name, Naomi. The voice was calm, gentle, steady in the chaos. The priest stood by the altar, eyes soft, a thin white envelope in his hand. He asked for this to be read out loud, he said. I stared at it, at my name written in that familiar messy scroll, Elias's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in almost 2 years, but I recognized it instantly. My knees went weak. I grabbed the edge of a pew just to stay standing. What could he possibly have written to me? I looked up. Every eye was on me now, some with pity, others with scorn, but mostly curiosity, confusion, like everyone was waiting to see what kind of twisted drama Elias had saved for the grave. My fingers trembled as I reached for the letter. The envelope was soft, worn, like it had been handled 100 times. Maybe it had, maybe he'd written it long before he died, or maybe just days before. I had no idea. I wanted to run, I wanted to vanish, but part of me needed to know. Why me? Why this? I took a deep breath, turned to face them all, and opened the letter. I wasn't ready to open that letter, but I did, not because I was brave, but because I think I owed him that much. After everything, as my fingers broke the seal, I couldn't stop thinking about how we ended, not with a bang, not even with a real goodbye, just silence. One day we were fighting, the next we were strangers. But before I tell you what was in the letter, I need to tell you about us. My name's Naomi Rivers. I met Elias when I was 21. I was the loud one, always laughing too hard, dreaming too big. He was different, quieter, like he carried storms in his chest but never let them show, and maybe that's what drew me to him, that quiet kind of intensity, like he saw me in a way no one else ever had. We were together for 4 years, 4 beautiful, heartbreaking, chaotic years. I won't lie to you and pretend it was perfect. It wasn't. Some days felt like we were orbiting 2 different planets, too far apart to touch, but on the good days, God, we were fire. We were soulmates, or at least I thought we were, until I wasn't enough anymore. The last year we were together, something shifted. Elias stopped opening up. He started disappearing, not physically but emotionally. I'd ask him what was wrong and he'd say nothing, while staring right through me. He stopped holding my hand in public, stopped smiling at my stupid jokes, stopped saying, "I love you," like he meant it, and I started breaking because I didn't know how to love someone who wouldn't let me, and I tried. I swear I tried everything. Therapy, long talks, space, no space, tears, silence, but nothing worked. One night I packed a single bag, left the key on the kitchen table, and walked away. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. My mother told me I was doing the right thing. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, she said. I nodded, but every night afterward I still wondered if I'd left too soon, if I'd abandoned someone who just needed more patience. That was 2 years ago. I hadn't seen Elias since the night I walked out, not even once. And then last week I got a call from Zara. Her voice was cracked and cold. She didn't say hello, didn't say how are you, just Elias is gone. The funerals Friday don't come, but I did not for them, for him, because part of me still loved the boy I met at 21, still dreamed of the version of us that could have made it, and I thought maybe showing up was the only way to let go. I wasn't expecting kindness, I definitely wasn't expecting forgiveness, but I also didn't expect to be handed a letter, his letter, in front of everyone who blamed me. As I held it, that same voice inside me whispered all the things I'd buried. What if he hated me? What if this letter is just one final blow? What if I was really the reason he didn't make it? The envelope felt heavy in my hands, not just in weight but in meaning. I could feel Zara's eyes burning holes into my skin. I could hear his mother whispering something under her breath. The priest stepped back, leaving me alone with it, alone with him one last time, and I hadn't even started reading yet. The seal cracked with a soft tear, but it felt like thunder in that silent room. I unfolded the letter with shaky hands, my breath catching in my throat. I didn't start reading right away. I just stared at the first line, his handwriting, that same lazy slant, the same loops in his voice that used to make me smile when he scribbled notes on the fridge or wrote little I miss you stickies on my mirror, but this wasn't that. This was his final message and everyone was waiting to hear it. I looked up, eyes were still on me, all of them, some filled with suspicion, some with outright hatred, and some like the priest's filled with something closer to sorrow. My throat tightened, my mouth was dry like I'd swallowed sand. I blinked hard once, twice, willing myself not to cry, not yet. I glanced to the right and caught Zara's stare. Her jaw was clenched, her arms crossed over her chest like she was physically holding herself back from storming the altar and yanking the letter from my hands. My stomach twisted, I couldn't stop the guilt from rushing in like a wave. Maybe I shouldn't have come, maybe I don't deserve to read this. The words echoed in my mind like poison. I thought about the last conversation I had with Elias. We were sitting in his car outside my apartment. It was raining, not pouring, just the soft kind, the kind that makes the world feel heavier. He wouldn't look at me, just stared out the windshield while I begged him to talk to me. I remember whispering, "Please, I need something, anything. I don't know how to keep fighting for us if you won't meet me halfway." And he'd said, still staring straight ahead, "Maybe I don't want to be fought for anymore." I don't think I ever recovered from that. I left that night, packed my things the next morning, and never came back. So yeah, maybe Zara was right. Maybe I did break him, or maybe he was already breaking and I just wasn't enough to stop it. The thing is, when someone you love slips away slowly, you don't even realize it until they're gone, and when they are gone in the most final way, all you're left with is a mountain of May. The priest took a step closer and gently touched my elbow. "Take your time," he said softly, as if he could feel my whole body trembling. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what I was agreeing to. "Read it now." "Wait," but there was no later. Not really. The letter was in my hands, the room was watching, and I knew if I didn't open my mouth soon I'd lose the nerve and possibly the only chance to understand what Elias wanted me to know. So I did the only thing I could. I inhaled deep, shaky breath in, and I began to read. "Naomi," I said out loud, voice cracking slightly, "if you're hearing this, I'm gone." A collective inhale rippled through the room. Even Zara shifted slightly in her seat. I kept going, my eyes scanning ahead. Just a few lines, and what I saw made my knees buckle, because the next sentence, it wasn't what anyone, especially me, expected. My voice shook as I read the next line. "Please don't let them turn you into a villain in my story." For a moment I couldn't speak. I just stared at the paper like the words might rearrange themselves, but they didn't. They sat there unmoving, undeniable. I looked up, instinct maybe, and met Zara's eyes for the first time since I walked in. She looked confused, not angry, not hateful, just confused, and that did something to me. It gave me the tiniest flicker of courage, like maybe I could keep going, maybe I needed to. So I swallowed the lump in my throat and continued. "You left because you had to, because I wouldn't let you love me the way you wanted to. I know that now. I think I always did." My breath hitched. I paused and stared down at the letter, fingers gripping it tighter than necessary. The paper was starting to wrinkle under my hands, but I didn't care, because for the first time in 2 years I was hearing him, really hearing him, and it wasn't blame, it wasn't anger, it was understanding. I let out a shaky laugh, one of those hollow emotional laughs that kind of hurts on the way out. "I thought this letter would be a knife," I whispered, "but it feels more like a bandage." I don't know why I said it out loud. Maybe because part of me had forgotten the room was even there, maybe because the moment felt too big to hold in silence. The priest stepped back slightly, giving me space, giving Elias space. "Really?" I looked down and kept reading. "There are things I never said to you, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. You always asked me to open up and I shut you out. That wasn't your fault, that was me, afraid of being seen. You saw me anyway, and it scared the hell out of me." I could hear someone crying softly behind me, maybe one of his cousins, maybe a stranger, but not Zara, not yet. "You were the only one who ever made me feel safe, Naomi, and I'm sorry that I couldn't return the favor." That line shattered something in me. I pressed the letter to my chest for a moment just to catch my breath. I didn't want to fall apart in front of them. I didn't want to cry in front of a room full of people who weren't ready to see me as anything but a mistake. But Elias, he saw me even in death. I glanced at his mother, still stone-faced, but her shoulders had dropped slightly. Her hands weren't clenched anymore. I took a step closer to the front, my voice a little stronger now. "I don't want you to carry my darkness like it's yours. That's why I left this letter, so you'd know the truth. You didn't break me, Naomi. I was already broken, and that was it." That was the line that changed the room. Zara blinked hard and looked away. The priest exhaled slowly. Even the silence changed, less brittle, more stunned. I folded the letter, my hands finally steady. The choice to come here felt right now, not easy, not painless, but right. And as I turned to face the people who once thought I didn't deserve to be there, I realized something. Elias hadn't written the letter for closure, he wrote it for forgiveness. Mine. I stood there for a few seconds after I finished reading, unsure of what to do next. The paper in my hands felt warm now, like it had absorbed everything. The tremble in my voice, the heat of the moment, the silence that followed. No one spoke, not even the priest. It was the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, it felt full, like the room had collectively exhaled a breath it didn't know it was holding. I looked around slowly. Faces that once held judgment now looked uncertain. Some were tear-streaked, others avoided my gaze, completely ashamed maybe that they'd been so quick to believe the worst of me. But it was Zara I looked for, and when I found her, she wasn't sitting anymore. She was standing at the edge of her pew, eyes red but dry. Her arms had dropped to her sides, fingers twitching like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. We stared at each other for a long time, and then she whispered just loud enough enough for the front rows to hear. Why didn't he say any of that to us? It broke something in her voice and in me. I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't sure there was an answer. I'd asked myself that same question 100 times while we were together. Why don't you just talk to me? But Elias wasn't the kind of person who let his pain spill. He tucked it away like broken glass in a drawer, out of sight but always cutting him from the inside. I think he wanted to protect you, I said quietly. All of you. Zara didn't respond. She just nodded once, like that was the only answer she needed. His mother, though, I don't know if she forgave me in that moment. Maybe she never will, but I caught her wiping her cheek with the edge of her black sleeve. Her eyes never met mine, but the hard line in her jaw softened, and that was enough. The priest cleared his throat gently and stepped forward again. We were going to end the service with a prayer, he said, his voice low and reverent, but I think Elias's words were more than enough. A few people nodded, others bowed their heads. I just stood there, the letter still pressed against my heart, and let the moment sink into my skin. I thought walking into that church was the hardest thing I'd ever do. I thought hearing their anger would destroy me, and maybe it almost did, but standing there with Elias's words wrapped around me like armor, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole for the first time in years. I wasn't weighed down by the what ifs or the maybe I should haves. I had the truth. I had his truth, and it changed everything. As people began to leave, some offered gentle nods in my direction. No one spoke, but their silence was different now, not cold, not condemning, just quiet, respectful. I walked outside into the crisp afternoon air, the sky still gray but softening around the edges. The breeze swept through, catching my hair in the edge of the letter as I folded it back into the envelope. Zara followed me out. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, arms crossed against the chill. Then finally, almost like it hurt to push the words out, and she said, I hated you. I didn't flinch. I know I don't anymore, she whispered. I think I just didn't know the whole story. Neither of us smiled, but we understood each other now, and that was enough. I didn't go to the burial, not because I didn't care, but because I'd said goodbye the way Elias needed me to, in front of everyone, through his own words, and honestly I think that was his final gift to me. I stood outside the church for a long time after everyone had left. The street was quiet, the sky a soft smoky gray, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or clear up. I liked the in-between. It matched how I felt, not broken, not healed, just in between. I sat on the edge of the stone steps and pulled the letter back out, smoothing the creases with my fingers. I didn't reread it right away. I just held it, let it sit in my hands like a heartbeat, warm and alive in a way he no longer was. I remember thinking he couldn't say it when he was alive, but he still wanted me to know. It made me wonder how many of us carry things we never say, how many people walk away before they realize someone loved them all along, how many apologies are buried before they ever make it to the surface. Alas, had been lost long before I left, but I carried that loss like it was mine to fix. I blamed myself for his silence, for his sadness, for his unraveling, and I let that guilt weigh me down for 2 whole years. But now I could finally breathe, not because he absolved me, but because he saw me even in the end, and that was more powerful than any forgiveness I thought I needed. A few days after the funeral, Zara called, not texted, not emailed, called. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She didn't say much, just told me she'd been thinking a lot about the letter and that she'd like to read it again if I was okay with that. I mailed her a copy. We haven't become close, and I'm not sure we ever will, but the walls are down now, and sometimes that's all. Healing really needs space where there used to be silence. I also started writing again. It was something I gave up when Elias and I split. I think a part of me didn't feel worthy of telling stories anymore, like the best chapter of my life had closed and everything after would just be blank pages. But I realized something: pain doesn't end a story, it just changes the tone. And Elias, he wasn't the final chapter in my book. He was the one that made the pages deeper, more complicated, more human. He was the lesson I didn't know I needed. So here's what I want to leave you with, especially if you're still carrying something heavy or loving someone who doesn't know how to love you back. Let them go gently, but hold on to the truth, because love doesn't always look like forever. Sometimes it looks like letting go, like walking into a room full of people who hate you and reading a letter that brings silence instead of screams. Sometimes love is the thing we leave behind, and sometimes it's what sets us